Hello, my friends of the 7th grade world. Hi, I miss y'all. So today we're going to be going over lesson 4. And in lesson 4, we are going to be adding integers and other rational numbers. So remember that the difference between an integer is that it is a positive or negative whole number, whereas rational numbers is this and fractions or decimals. So today's objective is that we will be able to add integers. So today we're only focusing on integers, adding them. So we're going to start with this fairly easy example where it says to represent the sum of 3 plus 5. And so I know you guys are already like, that's 8. Why are we doing this? I'm in 7th grade. But I want you to see it on a number line. So I would start by representing 3 with an arrow that is 3 units long to the right. It's to the right because it's positive. And since I'm adding 5, I'm going to start at the 3 because that's where I'm currently at. And I'm going to go 5 units to the right. And again, that is positive. So again, that's plus 3 and plus 5. So my answer becomes 8. You guys, again, I know you already know this. But the big thing was that we know that the arrow that represents 3 is 3 units long and to the right. And same with 5, it's 5 units long and to the right. So we know that our answer would be 8. If we were to just do an arrow that has that 8, then how long would that be? Well, it'd be 8 units long, and because it's positive, to the right. So fairly easy. I promise there's a point. So then we'll go to the next page. And so we're going to skip this question. We're going to skip this question. We're going to look at this next part that says negative 3 plus negative 5. And I'm hoping that in your head you're like, Mr. Senders, this is negative 8. But we're going to represent it the same way. But this time, because it's negative, it's going to go to the left. So it's 3 units to the left. And then from there, we're going to go 5 units to the left. So again, this is still addition, but notice that I'm writing plus the negatives because we're still adding them. So we get negative 8. Notice how this is 3 units, but this time it's to the left. And the 5 is also still 5 units, but this time it's to the left. So that gets us negative 8. If we were to think about negative 8 as an arrow, it would still be 8 units, but this time to the left. And so when we think about adding 2 positive numbers, we know that if we add 2 positive numbers together, it's just going to get bigger. Whereas if we add 2 negative numbers, it's going to get smaller, because remember, the further from 0 on the negative side, the smaller the number is. So that is actually what we're doing there, is we're not focusing so much on the signs when we're adding them. We're focusing on the absolute values. So anytime we are adding 2 numbers together, and if they have the same sign, we're just adding their absolute values and keeping the sign. So for example, 3 plus 5 equals 8 because these are both positive, whereas negative 3 plus negative 5 equals negative 8 because the absolute value of negative 3 is 3 and the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. So if we added those together, it would equal 8, but these are both negative, and so we want to make sure we are keeping that negative sign. If you need that refresher on what an absolute value is, it is the distance from 0, and it is always positive. So you guys are going to do exercise 2. You are not going to be adding. You are not going to be finding the sums. So not doing the math. The only thing I want you to focus on is deciding whether it will be positive or negative. Deciding if it's going to be positive or negative. And then you will, for B, you will find the sum. You will find the sum for B. So now I'm going to show you the rules for adding opposite signs. So we just added the same signs. Now we're going to add opposite signs, representing it the same way, where we have 5, and that's positive, so it's going to go 5 to the right. And I always just kind of like to represent that with the arrows and then the sum, or the number. And then now I'm adding -3, and we actually remember in the last problem that if we're adding a negative, we're moving to the left. So we're going to move to the left 3 units because it's a negative number, and I get 2. So the 5 was still 5 units, but it was to the right, and the 3 was 3 units, but this time it was to the left. And so we need to think which arrow is longer here, and clearly that's the 5. So the 5, and then the sum was 2, and that would be 2 units to the right. I want you guys to do B. But one thing that I always want you to remember is when you are adding rational numbers and they have opposite signs, so positive plus a negative, it means you are going to subtract the absolute values, meaning like the problem we just did, we would do 5 minus 3 and we get 2, and use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value, meaning you are going to make this positive because the 5 has the greater absolute value. And so you will apply that to B. Don't worry about this. You will work on exercise 3 by yourselves. Here again, you are not solving these. You are just deciding if it will be positive or negative. These you will solve. And then here you're just going to continue practicing and make sure you are paying attention to this. The rules still apply to rational numbers. So even if there's a fraction or a decimal, the rules still apply. Okay, and then for lesson summary, just remember that if you are adding two integers together, the sign will be the same. If you are subtracting, the sign will be different.